Do you know what the real enemy is in old age? It's not wrinkles, not the passage of time, not even loneliness. It's the silent poison of poor choices repeated day after day until you become a shadow of what you could have been. No one tells you this, but there are mistakes that don't just steal your health and peace of mind. They slowly strip away your dignity without you even noticing. And the worst part? Most people keep falling into them. Today, I want you to open your eyes because I'm going to show you 9 deadly mistakes that are ruining your life. Mistakes no one else has the guts to tell you about. Mistakes you might be making right now. And let me warn you, the last mistake is the deadliest, the most subtle, and the one that ages you from the inside out the fastest. I'm Gabriel, and if you're ready to listen without excuses, to face those uncomfortable truths no one else will tell you, stay until the end. This video might shake you up, but it could also give you back control over your life. Let's get started. Let me ask you something, honestly. When was the last time you looked in the mirror and asked yourself if you're still a desiring, living being, or if you've just become a passive witness to your own days? Don't tell me about your routine, your obligations, or what your kids or friends say. I'm asking if you still feel that fire inside you, that spark that used to make you come alive years ago, or if you've let it burn out because of the absurd belief that after a certain age, passion fades and the body stops being a temple and becomes a burden. Here we are at the first fatal mistake, believing that passion dies with age. And I'll tell you straight, that lie is killing you faster than any disease. Society has done a perfect job of planting that idea. We're programmed to think that desire, intimacy, and pleasure are privileges reserved for the young, as if wrinkled skin loses its ability to feel. They push you to believe that after a certain age, sex, physical affection, and sensuality are ridiculous whims, almost a shameful sin. Do you know what happens when you buy into that lie? You start disconnecting from yourself. You look at yourself as if you're an object that's already served its purpose and now has to settle for surviving. But the problem isn't just physical or even sexual. It's spiritual, because when you give up desire, you give up life. Marcus Aurelius said it with brutal clarity, "Do not let your soul shrink into a corner." And that's exactly what happens when you decide there's no place for passion in your life. Your soul shrinks, suffocates, withers away. Let me tell you a story. Years ago, I met a woman named Claire, 69 years old, a widow for some time, mother of 3 children who visited her occasionally. Claire had accepted the idea that her best days were behind her. She'd packed away her favorite dresses, stopped putting on makeup, and more importantly, she'd stopped feeling. Her routine was a parade of silences and identical days. One day, during a conversation, I asked her, "Have you ever allowed yourself to fall in love again?" She looked at me as if I was speaking a foreign language. "At my age," she said, "that's not for me." There's the poison. It's not that the body can't, it's not that life doesn't offer more chances. It's that you convince yourself you don't deserve them, that it's already too late. But the truth is, as long as you're breathing, as long as your hands can touch, as long as your mind can imagine, passion is still there, waiting to be rescued. It might come through a new relationship, rediscovering intimacy with your current partner, or even in the simple act of reconnecting with yourself, with your body, your ability to feel joy. Desire isn't a frivolity, it's a vital force. And when you decide to shut it off, you start dying before your time. Even the Bible, in the Song of Songs, celebrates passion and desire as something divine, not something to be hidden away with age. Who convinced you otherwise? Today, I want you to do something brave. Think about how many times you've told yourself that desire, physical affection, or simple joy in being alive no longer belong to you. And ask yourself, who put that idea in your head? Because I can guarantee you, it wasn't nature, it wasn't your soul, and it certainly wasn't God. The first fatal mistake is accepting that passion dies with age. Don't make that mistake. You still have the capacity to live fully, and that includes embracing your body, your emotions, and your desires, without shame, without excuses. But if you think this is intense, wait until you hear the next mistake. Because many people not only kill their passion, they hand over their entire happiness to others. Let's talk about how. We've already talked about how believing passion dies with age is a silent poison many swallow without realizing. But there's another poison, just as damaging, one that's even more accepted, more normal, and yet it's rotting the lives of countless men and women in their later years. It's time to talk about the second fatal mistake, becoming emotionally dependent on your children. I know this part is going to sting because it hits deep, because almost no one dares to lay it out bluntly. But we're not here to sugarcoat wounds, we're here to heal them at the root. And the root of this problem lies in a false belief carried for decades. The idea that our children owe us something, that they're obligated to repay all the effort and sacrifice we invested in raising them. That their love, their attention, their visits or calls are rights we automatically deserve just for being their parents. Living under this belief leads to devastation. You spend your days waiting for a message, a visit that never comes, a gesture of gratitude that's never enough. And each time it doesn't happen, you sink a little deeper. The sadness, the disappointment, the sense of abandonment pile up like heavy stones on your shoulders. But it's not their fault. The trap lies in having handed over your emotional well-being to the choices and availability of others, even when those others are your own children. The Stoics understood something we've forgotten. We can't control the actions of others, only our own. Epictetus put it plainly. It's not the things themselves that disturb men, but their opinions about them. Your children are adults. They have their own lives, their own problems, their own priorities. They're not always going to act how you want them to or give back the way you expect. And every time you tie your inner peace to their behavior, you chain yourself to an invisible prison. I see it every day. Parents who live glued to their phones, measuring their worth by how often their children reach out, falling into bitterness and sadness because they feel like they no longer matter. And in the process, they lose the most valuable thing they have, emotional autonomy. The ability to wake up each day knowing their dignity depends on no one, that the source of their serenity isn't in anyone else's hands. But I get it. It's natural to love your children, to want to be close, to share moments. This isn't about cutting ties, it's about regaining balance. Because when that love turns into a desperate need, it stops being love and becomes a chain dragging you down. Let me share something I'll never forget. A few years ago, I met Don Ernest, a 72-year-old man, strong, sharp, but consumed by a silent sadness. He admitted to me that what hurt him most wasn't physical loneliness, but emotional loneliness. His children barely called, and every day he waited by the phone as if his life's meaning depended on it. I asked him, "And what happens when they don't call?" He looked down and said, "I feel like I'm no one." That phrase hit me like a hammer, because it reveals the real heart of the problem. When we depend emotionally on others, we hand them the keys to our identity, and that's where self-destruction begins. But Don Ernest isn't an isolated case. Many live like this, carrying unnecessary sadness fueled by unfulfilled expectations. The Bible teaches us that love should neither be possessive nor conditional, that each person should tend to their own garden, trust God for what's beyond their control, and never place their worth in the world's responses. Love for your children should flow freely without chains, without suffocating expectations, not for them, but for yourself. We've reached a point in life where, if you don't reclaim your emotional independence, you'll drown. And I'm not talking about rejecting family love, but about no longer depending on it to breathe easy. Think about this. What would happen if, starting today, you decided that your well-being is no longer tied to your children's gratitude or attention? How would your day change if, instead of waiting for them to give you worth, you built it yourself from within? Remember, your serenity is priceless, and no one, not even your children, should have the power to take it away. But stay sharp, because we're not done yet. The next mistake is just as dangerous, and it has to do with something many people have stopped taking care of, thinking it no longer matters. And that neglect is what's pushing them into a much harder kind of dependency. I'll tell you about it now. We've already seen how emotional dependency can suffocate you without you even noticing, and how handing over your peace of mind to your children's actions or absence is a surefire recipe for bitterness. But it's not enough to break those emotional chains if, at the same time, you're neglecting the most valuable vehicle you have to sustain yourself, your own body. We've reached the third point in this video, and this is where things can start to shift radically. I need you to pay close attention, because the next fatal mistake is neglecting your body because it's not worth it anymore. Have you ever caught yourself saying or thinking things like, "Why should I take care of myself at my age? It's pointless now," or avoiding movement, eating poorly, simply because you think the damage is already done and there's no going back? That's one of the cruelest traps people fall into without questioning it. And this isn't just about physical health. It's something deeper. It's about the relationship you have with yourself and the respect you choose or don't choose to give yourself every single day. For the Stoics, the body was seen as an instrument, not the ultimate goal. Epictetus taught us not to become slaves to it, but also not to despise it, because it's the vessel through which we can practice virtue, enjoy life, serve others, and maintain our dignity. And without physical dignity, without mobility, without autonomy, the mind and spirit eventually crumble too. So here's something simple, yet profoundly powerful. Start moving every day, even with small gestures. It doesn't matter if you can't run a marathon or lift weights. A 10-minute walk, stretching when you wake up, taking the stairs instead of the elevator, every action counts. And do you know why it works? Because it sends a clear message to your mind and soul. I still belong to myself. I still can. Every step, every movement is a silent affirmation of life. I remember Teresa, a 75-year-old woman I met some time ago. After becoming a widow, she fell into a sedentary routine. She'd say there was no point in getting up early anymore, that she just didn't have the strength. But one day, almost without thinking, she decided to step outside and go to the park. She walked barely 5 minutes and came back exhausted. But she did it again the next day, and the next. 2 months later, Doña Teresa wasn't just walking half an hour daily. She had regained something far more valuable, her drive. She told me something I've never forgotten. It wasn't my body that was tired, it was my spirit that had stopped moving. That's exactly what I want you to understand today. Neglecting your body isn't just about letting your joints stiffen or letting illness creep in faster. It's about accepting defeat before your time. But every time you choose to move, to nourish yourself properly, to rest well, you're sending a clear message to the universe and to yourself. I'm still here. I'm still in control. Now, if any of these reflections are resonating with you, if something inside you is telling you it's time to take back control, I invite you to subscribe right now and hit the like button. That way, we can keep sharing these kinds of messages and reach more people who might be forgetting how much power they still have. I'd also love for you to tell me which country you're watching from and drop a simple phrase in the comments, "My body is my ally." Because affirming it is the first step to making it real. And don't go anywhere, because what's coming next is just as essential. There are still mistakes silently destroying people's peace of mind without them realizing. And let me give you a heads up. The last one is the most dangerous of all, the one that consumes your life from the inside out the fastest. Stay with me till the end. We've already seen how neglecting your body is much more than a physical issue. It's a silent surrender of your own dignity. But even if you start moving, eating better, taking care of yourself, if deep down you're still trapped by certain ideas, no change will last. And that's why we need to talk about the fourth fatal mistake, one that has destroyed the peace and purpose of more lives than you can imagine. I'm talking about saving without purpose and dying in fear. I know this topic is sensitive. No one wants to admit they've spent years stockpiling money as if it were a shield against life's uncertainties, only to reach an age where the fear remains the same, or even stronger. How many times have you felt guilty for spending on something that would genuinely make you happy? How many times have you denied yourself small pleasures, not because you can't afford them, but because that whisper of financial insecurity keeps telling you it's better to keep saving, and saving? It's a habit so ingrained, even celebrated, that few dare to question it. But let me be clear. That kind of saving without purpose, that constant accumulating, isn't giving you freedom. It's chaining you. And worse yet, it keeps you living in fear until your final days. The Stoics spoke often about control and the illusion of security. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, one of the wealthiest and most powerful men of his time, taught us that true security doesn't come from what you own. It comes from the serenity with which you can live without it. What's the point of filling bank accounts, filling drawers with things, if your heart is still empty and your mind restless? The mistake happens because for years, maybe decades, you were taught that money is your only guarantee against uncertainty. That if you save enough, you'll avoid dependency, suffering, or scarcity. But no one told you that if you don't know why you're saving, if you're not using that money for experiences, growth, or moments that lift you up, you'll end up living like a guardian of something you never actually enjoy. And the fear? It stays right there, untouched. I've seen this far too many times. People who, after working their whole lives, paying off their homes, supporting their kids, building up a financial cushion, reach old age still worrying about every dollar they spend. They deny themselves a trip, a class, a night out, because who knows what might happen tomorrow. And while that tomorrow never comes, the years slip right through their fingers, without joy, without enjoyment, without peace. And do you know what's the saddest part? That money often doesn't even get used for their own well-being. It's saved with the idea of leaving something for the kids, of not being a burden, of anticipating every possible problem. But life is unpredictable, and no matter how much you plan, there will always be things beyond your control. And while you wait for the perfect moment to use what you've saved, your life, passes you by. The key here isn't about spending recklessly. It's not about wasting or living without foresight. The key is purpose. What's the purpose of what you've accumulated? What experiences, what lessons, what relationships could you strengthen today with what you already have? Because money, when it sits still and doesn't flow, ends up having power over you. But when you decide to put it in service of what nourishes you, a new project, a hobby, a trip, an act of generosity, that's when the control returns to your hands. If you don't break free from this fear, you'll end up a prisoner of your own savings. You'll die afraid, not because of a lack of resources, but because you lived under the constant anxiety of losing something you never allowed yourself to enjoy. And that, believe me, is one of the saddest wastes I've seen in old age. So today I leave you with this question. What's the point of everything you've saved if you're not using it to live better? Don't take that fear to the grave. There's a bigger purpose waiting for you, but only if you choose to release the chains and use what you have to feed life, not to feed fear. And we're not done yet. There are still mistakes just as dangerous, silently trapping people without them realizing. Now we're about to step into even deeper territory, where many have given up too soon without understanding the real price they're paying. Stay with me because we're just starting to uncover what you've been ignoring. We've reached the 5th point in this video, and this is where more than a few of you will feel like I'm speaking directly to you, as if I'm holding a mirror right up to your face. This mistake is brutal in its simplicity, but devastating in its consequences. Believing that you can't start over. How many times have you caught yourself saying, "I'm too old for that. That's for young people." Or worse, "What's the point of starting something now if I don't have that much time left?" Maybe you don't say it out loud, but you think it every time a new idea crosses your mind, and you immediately dismiss it. Because you've been sold the lie that after 60, 70, or 80, life stops offering opportunities and only leaves you resignation, and you've bought into it. But here's the harsh truth. Every time you fall into that mindset, you're digging your own emotional grave. You're condemning your days to be a gray repetition without excitement or purpose. And worse still, you're becoming someone others stop taking seriously, because no one respects a person who has given up on themselves. I've seen it countless times. People who were once strong, decisive, hard-working, but after retirement, after losing their spouse, after their children built their own lives, they simply threw in the towel. They settled for just surviving, for the routine, for the same 4 walls, for the same empty conversations. And the longer you stay there, the more trapped you feel by that sense of uselessness. Silent frustration sets in. That discomfort you can't quite explain, that feeling something's missing, but you can't pinpoint what. Then comes dependency, because when you stop having goals of your own, you start living through what others do or decide for you. And worst of all, you lose respect, the respect you should have for yourself. But let me tell you something you might not want to hear. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter how many mistakes you've made. You can always start over. This isn't a pretty phrase or cheap comfort. It's a real principle, proven by those who've had the guts to challenge their own limits. Of course, starting over doesn't mean erasing the past or pretending the scars aren't there. It means looking at what you have today, time, skills, experience, even pain, and deciding what you're going to build with it. The Stoics taught that the only moment we truly own is the present. Seneca said, "As long as you live, keep learning how to live." He wasn't talking about youth, he was talking about attitude, because life isn't measured by how many years you've spent in it, but by how many times you've had the courage to reinvent yourself. The first step to breaking this pattern is to stop shrinking beneath your own excuses. Yes, there will be obstacles. Yes, learning something new, opening yourself to new relationships, or starting a project at this stage isn't easy. So what? What's really hard is continuing to pile up empty days, convinced that nothing is possible anymore. I want you to ask yourself today, what's that thing you've always wanted to do, but kept postponing because you believed it wasn't for you at this age? What project, hobby, or dream did you lock away in a drawer when you thought your time had passed? Because I'll tell you something, the clock doesn't have the final word. You do. But don't get me wrong. This isn't an easy message. No one's going to hand you motivation on a silver platter. It's up to you, with the clarity and strength you still have, to decide whether you'll keep repeating the same days until the end, or whether you'll have the courage to start again, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's uncertain. And trust me, there's still much more to uncover. What's coming next touches on one of the most common traps silently draining your peace and energy. Stay with me. It's time to face it. If what you've heard so far has shaken you, it's because deep down, you know continuing as you are is no longer an option. We've already talked about how destructive it is to give up too soon, to believe there are no new beginnings left. But even if you decide to take back control of your life, there's one insidious trap that can keep dragging you back into frustration and apathy. And it's time to face it. We've reached the 6th point in this video, and today I want you to focus on something most people ignore until it's far too late. Living trapped in routine and isolation. Picture this clearly. You wake up tomorrow and do exactly what you did yesterday. You drink the same coffee, watch the same news, pace the same path through your house, have the same conversations with the same people. Days go by, weeks, months. Everything is predictable, safe, and emptier by the minute. Until one day, you realize you can't remember the last time you felt surprised, the last time you truly laughed, the last time you learned something new. You've become a shadow, merely surviving. And the silence, comfortable at first, starts to weigh on you like a stone. This is no exaggeration. I see it every day. People who built their entire lives fulfilling duties, raising kids, working, being useful. And when that stage ends, all that's left is a routine without purpose, pure inertia. They get up because they have to, eat because they have to, watch TV until the day dies. And isolation isn't always physical. You don't have to be alone to feel lonely. The real isolation happens when you disconnect your mind and soul from any stimulus that challenges you, that wakes you up. The trap is subtle. It makes you believe routine equals comfort. But misunderstood comfort is the start of a slow death. It's the calm that kills, the quiet that wears you down. The Stoics were crystal clear about this. A virtuous life demands inner movement. It requires discipline and effort, but also novelty, a spirit that never renews itself, that never exposes itself to change, to learning, to real connection, becomes shackled by its own invisible chains. Do you know what happens after years of this? You start losing the respect of those around you, yes. But worse, you stop respecting yourself. You become someone just waiting for life to pass by, while your energy, your ideas, and your opportunities quietly wither away. And I'm not here to sell you the cheap illusion that everything gets fixed by thinking positive or making a to-do list. No. What I want is for you to ask yourself, with brutal honesty, what are you doing today that actually keeps you awake? When was the last time you did something outside the routine, something that made you uncomfortable, that demanded more from you than just being a spectator? Now imagine 1 more year, 2 more years, living exactly the same way. Do you really believe that won't have consequences? The frustration grows, the sadness settles in. And worst of all, you end up blaming others, your kids, society, your age, for a prison you've built for yourself one day at a time. But here's the good news. There's still something you can do. You don't have to flip your life upside down overnight, but you do need to break the chain. One different decision, one small step outside the routine. That's the start of no longer being a slave to your repeated days. And listen carefully, because we're not done yet. What's coming next might be the hardest thing to face. There's another mistake hiding in plain sight, right in the middle of your closest relationships, that's quietly draining people's energy and self-respect without them even noticing. Stay with me, because that's the next blow we need to deliver. We've already seen how comfortable routine can turn into a prison, how the lack of purpose makes your days feel like a meaningless parade. But there's something just as corrosive, something that often disguises itself as affection, as commitment, but in reality is an anchor holding you back. We've reached the 7th point in this video, and it's time to lay it out plainly: clinging to relationships that drain your energy. It doesn't matter how much you've reflected up to this point. if you're still surrounded by people who only know how to take from you, who only reach out when they need something, who chip away at your peace and your time, all your inner work will crumble. I'm not just talking about partners, friends, or even family members who slowly consume you. I'm talking about any connection that doesn't respect your time, your effort, your peace of mind. Do you know how many times I've met men and women who, just to avoid being alone, end up being someone else's emotional dumpster? People who put up with constant criticism, disdain, disinterest, just because they think that's better than silence. But here's the truth. There's no lonelier feeling than being surrounded by people who don't value you. It's like having guests in your house who leave you without food, without light, without space, and yet you keep opening the door for them every single day. The problem is, no one wants to face it. They come up with excuses, but they're family. We've been friends for years. I feel bad saying no. But every time you swallow those disguised mistreatments, every time you let someone else decide how you should feel, you're signing your own surrender. You're saying, my energy, my peace, my dignity aren't worth enough for me to set boundaries. Stoic philosophy is clear about this. Seneca warned that it's better to be alone than poorly accompanied. It's not about being insensitive, it's about being honest with yourself. Real relationships add to your life. They don't drain you. They lift you up. They don't leave you empty. So I want you to pause for a moment and take a brutally honest look at yourself. How many of the people around you today truly respect you, support you, listen to you, and how many show up only when they have something to take from you? That difference draws the line between living with autonomy and living dragged down by guilt and obligation. I know cutting ties or changing these dynamics isn't easy. Many people are afraid of ending up alone, afraid of how uncomfortable change can be. But let me tell you plainly, until you make the firm decision to surround yourself only with those who deserve to stand by your side, there won't be real transformation. Every bit of personal growth you think you've achieved will bleed out every time you allow yourself to be manipulated, used, disrespected. There's no room here for denial or for convenient excuses. No one's going to rescue you from toxic relationships. No one's going to defend your boundaries for you. That's on you. And until you take responsibility for that, you'll stay a prisoner of your own fears. Now, if everything we've talked about so far has made you reflect, wait until you hear what's next, because we're down to one of the most silent, but also the deadliest mistakes of all. One that doesn't come from outside, but grows inside you every single day with the power to steal your life without you even noticing. Stay with me. It's time to face it. What we just discussed about relationships that drain your energy is no small matter, because if you keep letting others take from you, you'll be left with no strength to care for yourself. And life, believe me, doesn't wait. But even if you manage to cut those toxic ties, there's still one mistake silently lurking. The one where many betray themselves without even realizing it. We're at the 8th point of this video, and it's time to face it, leaving your spirituality for later. It's strange how people, as long as they feel they have time, keep putting off anything related to the soul. They chase money, daily obligations, family duties, and when they finally reach the stage where the clock starts ticking louder, they still believe that connecting with their faith, with their spirituality, is something they can keep postponing, as if there's always going to be a tomorrow guaranteed to make peace with God, with themselves, with life. Let me tell you something uncomfortable. Later doesn't exist. Every time you decide to postpone that inner connection, every time you silence the voice telling you to stop and look within, you move one step further away from the peace you're desperately searching for in the outside world. And you know what happens? The emptiness keeps growing. You surround yourself with things, distractions, even people, But the feeling of being incomplete doesn't go away, because what you're missing isn't out there, it's inside. Many think spirituality means going to church only on special occasions or repeating mechanical prayers. But no, real spirituality is a daily practice. It's the conscious act of connecting with something greater than yourself, whether you call it God, nature, the universe. It's the space where you regain perspective, where you realize you're not just a body that's aging, but a spirit that needs to be nourished, just like your body, just like your mind. Let me be clear. It doesn't matter if you've been distant from your faith for years, if you've had doubts, if life has made you question everything. There's no valid excuse for continuing to ignore that essential part of you. And you don't need a grand ritual to begin. What you do need is a firm decision. Starting today, every morning, take 10 minutes to pray, meditate, give thanks, or simply sit in silence with yourself and with God. 10 minutes. No one else can do that work for you. But here's the trap. Many will start and stop after a week. Why? Because they still think inner peace is an automatic result, that a couple of gestures will be enough to make everything fall into place, and it won't. The right mindset is to understand this is a commitment. Just like you feed your body every day, you must feed your spirit. No excuses, no delays, no waiting for life to get easier before you start. The biggest mistake is thinking you can save your relationship with the divine for when you have more time, more desire, or fewer problems. But the only guarantee you have is this moment. Everything you don't do today for your soul, you'll pay for tomorrow, in the form of anxiety, frustration, loneliness, and emptiness. And there are no shortcuts here. No one's going to hand you serenity. No one's going to deliver faith to your doorstep. You decide whether to keep ignoring that inner voice or finally stop long enough to start listening. Because I'll tell you this, the next mistake, the last one we're going to face, is the most silent, the most deceptive. And if you don't work on your inner self, that mistake will end up consuming what's left of your life. Stay with me. What's next is definitive. You've made it through 8 hard-hitting truths, 8 things that maybe no one else has dared to lay out for you, stripped of sugarcoating or polite detours. And if you've stayed with me this far, it's because something deep inside knows that living on autopilot is no longer an option. But now comes the most subtle blow, the deadliest one, because it doesn't come from the outside. It comes from you. We've reached the 9th and final point of this video, and it's the most dangerous of all, thinking you can no longer be surprised. Think about it. How many times have you woken up in the morning assuming there's nothing new left for you? That everything you could have learned, experienced, felt is already behind you? That routine, responsibilities, exhaustion, or even age have drained your ability to feel wonder. This thought is a trap so sophisticated you don't even realize when you've fallen into it. And the worst part is, it starts building invisible walls around your life. One day, you stop trying new things. Another day, you stop going out, meeting people, taking chances. And before you know it, you've become someone who watches life pass by from the sidelines without ever participating. The problem is, this self-deception is comfortable. It lets you justify why you no longer take risks, why you settle for less, why you avoid taking the step you know you should take. At my age, there are no more surprises, you tell yourself. Or worse, better not get my hopes up so I won't be disappointed. But what you don't see is that with every excuse, every justification, you dim your own light. It's not life that's losing its color. You've chosen to stop seeing it. The Stoics were very clear about this. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Every morning, when you wake up, remind yourself that you're alive, and that the simple fact of being here is reason enough to be amazed." And it's not just a nice quote, it's a principle for living. Because as long as you're breathing, you have the ability to be amazed, to find something new, to learn, to challenge yourself, to change. But of course, being surprised means discomfort. It means stepping out of the mold you've repeated for years. That's why it feels safer to stay right where you are, surrounded by what's familiar, even if it no longer fulfills you. Because it's easier to expect nothing than to take the risk of expecting something and being faced with the challenge of feeling, of living, of acting. Today, I want you to stare that lie straight in the face. That little voice telling you, there's nothing left for you. Tear it down. Because as long as you believe everything has already been said, already been seen, you'll keep walking toward the end like a spectator in your own life. And you weren't put on this earth to be a spectator. Ask yourself with absolute honesty, when was the last time something truly surprised you? And why did you stop looking for it? Because there's no valid excuse here. It's not your age, it's not lack of opportunity, it's not routine. It's the daily decision not to look, not to try, not to step outside your own script. And I'll tell you something even harder. If you don't break free from this mindset today, right now, it won't matter how many tips you hear, how many new habits you try, or how many videos you watch. You'll keep living halfway. Real change only comes when you decide to open your eyes and recognize that life still has the power to surprise you if you allow it. So this list ends here, but only if you decide it ends. Because everything we've talked about means nothing if you wake up tomorrow with a closed mind and a shut-off heart. It's up to you whether you rewrite your story or resign yourself to watching others write it for you. If you've made it this far, you're not like most people. Most people stop watching when something makes them uncomfortable. Most people cling to their excuses, look the other way, and keep blaming others for the life they have. But not you. You stayed. And that means that even if it hurts, you're aware that something needs to change. I didn't come here to give you a feel-good speech or tell you everything's going to be easy. I came to show you, straight up, the mistakes that are sabotaging your life, because no one else is going to tell you like this without sugarcoating it. Now the question is simple and brutal. What are you going to do with this? You can't claim ignorance anymore. You can't lie to yourself. Every one of these mistakes has deep roots, but they also have a solution. And that solution doesn't lie with anyone else. Not your kids, not your friends, not luck. It's in you. Today, not tomorrow. I want to ask you something. If you're truly ready to step out of the comfort that's been slowly destroying you, leave a comment with the phrase, "I choose to wake up," and let me know what country you're watching from. I want to know who's out there, who's not afraid to face life head-on and still chooses to act. I want to see you there because this space, the Stoic Garden, exists for exactly that. For those who refuse to settle, who'd rather face a hard truth than live a comfortable lie. I'm Gabriel, and every word I share here has one clear purpose: to remind you that dignity, serenity, and control over your life are never handed to you. You're the only one who can claim them. If these truths have resonated with you, it's not enough to hear them once and carry on as usual. Subscribe right now. Join this community that's choosing to wake up, that isn't afraid to question itself and grow, even when it hurts. Share this video with someone who needs to hear these raw truths. Sometimes, one message is all it takes to make a difference for someone who truly needs it. And don't leave just yet. What you've just heard isn't the end. Here are 2 videos that can help you keep opening your eyes, help you keep making choices that transform your daily life. Because this conversation doesn't end here. It's just the beginning, if you choose it to be. I'll see you in the next video. Stay strong, stay awake,